Hello everyone, this is Drew Perkins, the Director of Professional Development here at TeachThought Professional Development, and I wanted to use my Explain Everything app on my Android tablet to kind of walk through this graphic here of the arc of the 8 basic steps of project-based learning to help you get started. As always, you can find us at wegrowteachers.com, which is down here in that right-hand corner, or you can just go to teachthought.com and click on the professional development tab there. So let's get started. So looking at this graphic, I just wanted to be clear right up front that this is a simplified version of the process of planning and implementing project-based learning. If you look at the blog pieces, I've gone into some more detail, but I think it's important to note that the project-based learning process is certainly much more complex than just being able to put it in 8 little steps like this. But hopefully this will help you get started and give you a launching point. So let's talk about this. Down here in the middle is our project-based learning model, if you will. So the 5 levers of quality, and really what we really are focusing on is elevating and amplifying this thinking and learning, and we're going to talk about that over here in a few moments. These levers here are actual levers for a reason, because they are meant to leverage and elevate that thinking and learning. So rich inquiry and authenticity, the autonomy that we want students to be able to experience, the assessment being meaningful towards craftsmanship. So if you'd like more information on that, please definitely get in touch with us, grow@teachthought.com, or you can check out our PBL workshop page on We Grow Teachers. So let's start over here. Most projects tend to start by really teachers considering the thinking and learning that we want the students to experience. And as these little bubbles have here, this one kind of says, you know, what's the content, what are the skills that you want them to really think through and learn about and experience. And in some cases it may not be content, because you might have a 20% hour or a genius hour kind of thing. But of course most courses are driven by content and content standards, and we recognize that. But it's really about that thinking and learning. So you want to consider that and plan with the end in mind in most cases. Now, that being said, I've seen lots of projects where teachers come at it from a different angle, where they have a really authentic product that they know a lot about, and they think that they can get teaching and learning, or the thinking and learning out of that they want. They might have an authentic audience. You know, some of the other ways that you can come at it, there's no one way to do it, but you always want to be thoughtful about that thinking and learning that you're after. So let's move to the next step here. So product, purpose, and audience. These things are really, really important for teachers to consider. It's really important that students are understanding what that product, purpose, and audience is for the project. So you want to think about, what will the students create, why are they creating it, and for what authentic audience. What we really want to make sure is that students know what they're making and creating or producing, why they're doing it, and for whom. And that gives you a leverage point as a teacher, because you can, instead of when a student comes up to you and says, is this good or is this good enough, you can then go back to that question of, does it meet the needs of the audience and the purpose. So those things are really important to be clear about as you're planning and before you're planning goes too far with a project design. Now these things are really closely related and tied together. A driving question really needs to be clear about what it is that the students are doing as you're getting started in your planning. And that's why we really recommend, and if you look at the blog post you'll see a visual of this, but some sort of a starter template. And we use the word starter because you'll probably want to refine it and make it a little bit more student friendly or something like that. But if you're starting with clarity around what your product is and what your purpose is, and this starter template can help you with that, then that'll be really helpful as you're going along. So just to help illustrate this driving question starter template is, how can we, and in parentheses do, so fill in that blank, how can we create, design, plan, present, something like that. And then it's the so that, what's the why? So how can we create a plan so that homelessness might be reduced in our community, or something like that. So once you've got those things clarified and your authentic audience is clear as well, then you can go on and refine it and make it a little bit more student friendly, or sort of t-shirt bumper sticker friendly, those kinds of things. But the students really need to know that product, purpose, and audience, and sometimes it can be very explicit in the driving question. So let's move along here. So what will students need to know? And again, this is not a linear process like I've sort of illustrated it here just to simplify it. There's lots of parallel, simultaneous things going on. But when you're thinking about what will students need to know in your project, you need to make sure that it's aligned with that thinking and learning that you're after. Okay? So you started with that thinking and learning here. You want to sort of double back and recheck and make sure that you're aligned, because if what the students need to know in order to answer that driving question and finish that project and do it well doesn't align with that thinking and learning, well, then you've got a misalignment and you've got to go back and realign things here. Okay, so let's move along here to the other side. Now you're sort of in the project phase, if you will. You've done a lot of planning here. You've kicked it off with an entry event, some sort of a hook. You've released your driving question. You now want to start building your need-to-know list. And you want to think about that. How are you going to help students identify and uncover those need-to-knows from that driving question? And quite often, that's going to be a struggle as students who are not used to project-based learning and not used to rich inquiry, sort of have a struggle with that. They're not used to doing that. So you want to think about how and when are you going to get those things that you know need to be on there, the thinking and learning, the need-to-knows. We want to make sure that those things are up on that list, and you want to think about how you're going to get them there. So what are the new things that you're going to teach them and expose them to and have them read or look at or watch or consider that might give them new questions? What are some new questions that might arise from further questions, from answering future needs or previous need-to-knows? And so this need-to-know list, it doesn't happen just one time at the beginning. It is an ongoing process, and you're sort of checking things off and adding more things. And not everything has to show up right away, but you want to make sure by the time you get all the way to the end here that all of those things that you know that they needed to know and understand showed up in that need-to-know list. So of course, if it's on the need-to-know list, now it's contextualized, and we want to think about how am I going to teach it? So how and when will you teach it to the students? And as you're going along here, this is a really important piece for planning purposes, sort of the science of teaching, so that you can really be sure that you're on top of things. You're not building that plane while you're flying it. You have an idea of when and how you're going to teach those things. You can look at our project scaffolding planner, use whatever kind of calendar it is that you use. Maybe you use a regular, straight up for 4 weeks in a month. Maybe you use a lesson planning book. Doesn't matter, but you do want to have things planned out so that you know when and how you're going to teach those things that they need to know. Of course, you're going to need to be flexible. But having that planning done ahead of time will really help you be flexible and then demonstrate that art of teaching where you're responsive and flexible and sort of fluent with their needs. And you can meet them where they are and really sort of push them to that point of productive struggle where they're not giving up, but they're still engaged and they're still really thinking. Okay, so this is a lot of teacher does, but you also want to make sure that the students are doing. And if it's worth teaching the need-to-knows, you want to make sure that you're formatively assessing. So when and how are you going to formatively assess and check that those understandings are being connected, that the students understand what it is that you're teaching, and how are you going to respond if they don't understand, and some of them will and some of them won't, and how are you going to differentiate inside of that? So again, we want to be thoughtful about this process. It can be peer critique, it could be formal quizzes, could be dialogue, lots of different ways to formatively assess. But across the board, teachers will tell you in reflections after first or second projects, they will say, almost always, boy, I wish I'd had more formative assessment, more checkpoints built in. Now, as we finish up here, and again, this is not as simple as I've sort of made it, but just to help you get started here, now we're at the sort of summative part where you're going to share that work, share the student work with the authentic audience. And of course, it's important that that authentic audience is known way over here and that the students understand it throughout the process, not just at the end. Okay, so how are you going to assess their thinking and learning and success? And you want to consider, how are you going to assess that content? How are you going to assess those skills? Are you going to look at individuals or groups in lots of different ways? As the blog says, there's probably a lot of content and other things that you can assess through the process, and it doesn't all have to be down at this end, this last summative thing, but it's important that you are thoughtful about this part way over here, so that this doesn't just sort of feel like just sort of threw it together and we shared it with some people and there wasn't any real need for them to hear it or learn about it, that kind of thing. So don't forget, and this is maybe something for if I could draw an arrow here down here, if once you finish, don't forget to give yourself some time with your class to reflect and be thoughtful about what went well, what was successful, what didn't go well, why wasn't it successful, and that's from the teacher point of view, but also the student point of view. That's a great metacognitive moment for them to process their learning and think about what they might do differently next time. And for you as a teacher, what might you do differently in this project if you do it again, or another project as you're going forward. So those are important points, and it's easy to just move along, but don't forget to do that reflection piece. I hope this was helpful. Again, it's not a simple process, but these steps hopefully will give you a launching off point, a jumping off point, so that you can dive in and do a little bit more research. We're certainly here to help. Again, the website is We Grow Teachers down here on the right corner. Our PBL model is on the PBL workshop page, and if you go on the PBL workshop page, there's a link underneath this graphic that has a bunch of free resources that we use in our PBL workshops. Would love to have you get in touch with us. Let us know what questions you have. Again, my name is Drew Perkins, Director of Professional Development, and you can email us at grow@teachthought.com. Thanks.